The ocean floor is the world's greatest museum, but its exhibits are cities. Beneath the waves lies a hidden world of forgotten civilizations, each one a story swallowed by the sea. This journey will take you to 20 submerged ruins, and by the end, you will see human history through an entirely new lens. We will uncover ports that vanished overnight and legendary empires lost to myth. What can a city drowned by a single earthquake teach us about our own fragile coastlines? How does a perfectly preserved street plan from 5,000 years ago rewrite our understanding of the ancient world? Each site is a testament to human ambition and nature's enduring power. Are we prepared to listen to the lessons these silent, underwater worlds are trying to tell us? A colossal stone face emerges from the dark. It is the god of the Nile flood, Hapi, now gazing eternally upward through 15 feet of Mediterranean water. This statue was not placed here as an offering. It once stood proudly in a thriving city square, a monument to the life-giving river that sustained an entire civilization. This is the sunken city of Heracleion, and its rediscovery is one of modern archaeology's most breathtaking chapters. For centuries, this place was pure myth. Ancient Greek historians wrote of a magnificent Egyptian port, a gateway where foreign traders first set foot on the sacred soil of the pharaohs. They called it Heracleion. The Egyptians knew it as Thonis, but as the centuries passed, no physical trace of it could be found on land, and scholars began to wonder if it had ever existed at all. Then, in the early 2000s, a team led by marine archaeologist Frank Gaudio began a systematic survey of the Abu Qir Bay near the Nile Delta. Using advanced side-scan sonar and magnetometers, they mapped anomalies on the seafloor. What they pulled from the soft, enveloping mud was not just a few scattered artifacts. It was an entire world. They found towering statues of a pharaoh and a queen, their features still sharp after more than a millennium underwater. They recovered delicate gold jewelry, ceremonial barges, and countless coins. Most tellingly, they uncovered massive stone blocks inscribed with decrees, written in both ancient Egyptian and Greek, that confirmed this was indeed the legendary customs port where all trade from the Greek world entered Egypt. Here, pharaohs were formally crowned with legitimacy from the gods. The scale of the discovery was staggering, proving that the city was not a small outpost but a major, wealthy hub of culture and commerce. So what happened to it? Researchers believe Heracleion's fate was not a single cataclysmic event, but a slow, relentless surrender. The city was built on the unstable clay of the Nile Delta. Over time, the weight of its massive stone temples and monuments, combined with a gradual rise in sea levels and possible seismic activity, caused the ground to literally liquefy. The earth beneath Heracleion turned to soup, and the glorious city sank, inch by inch, over perhaps a century or more, until the sea finally claimed it entirely around the 8th century AD. Its ruins now rest under about 30 feet of water, preserved in a blanket of sediment that protected them from the worst currents. The silent, submerged statues of Heracleion are more than just relics. They are a profound lesson in geological vulnerability. They show us that even the most powerful and sophisticated civilizations are built upon a foundation that nature can, quite literally, dissolve. If such a vital port could vanish so completely from human memory, what other legendary gateways to lost empires are still out there, waiting silently beneath the silt? The debate over Heracleion was settled by inscriptions in stone, but some discoveries offer no such clarity. In the impossibly clear, blue waters off the coast of Yonaguni Island, Japan, the seafloor holds a mystery that refuses to be solved. A diver named Kirkairo Aratake first saw it in 1986, a site that would define his life. Below him, not a collection of ruins, but a single, staggering monolith. It rose like a stepped pyramid from the seabed, over 80 feet tall, with what appeared to be perfectly flat terraces, sharp 90-degree corners, and colossal pillars. It looked in every sense like a structure. The local fishermen had known of the area for generations, calling it simply the underwater ruins, but Aratak's discovery brought it to the world. Geologists who have studied the site point to the natural properties of the local sandstone, which fractures in clean, straight lines along its bedding planes. They argue that the powerful currents in the region could, over millennia, sculpt those fractures into the dramatic terraces and platforms we see, a purely natural process of erosion. Yet other researchers, like marine geologist Professor Masaaki Kimura, have spent decades surveying the site and point to features that seem to defy easy explanation. They note what appear to be carved steps with consistent rise and run, two round holes that look like mooring posts, and a triangular opening that resembles a ceremonial gate. Professor Kimura proposes the monument could be the remnant of a ceremonial complex from a civilization that thrived over 10,000 years ago, a time when this area would have been dry land during the last ice age. This idea inevitably touches upon the persistent myth of a lost Pacific continent, sometimes called Mu, a Pacific counterpart to the legend of Atlantis. The Yonaguni monument forces us to confront a fundamental question about how we see the past. When we look at a shape underwater, are we seeing a pattern our human minds are wired to find? Or are we seeing the deliberate hand of another human mind from a forgotten age? This is not just a scientific debate, it is a philosophical one. It asks us where we draw the line between the incredible art of nature and the enduring marks of human culture. In the silent, sunken galleries of Yonaguni, the water reflects back our own desire to find builders in the stones, making it one of the ocean's most profound and beautiful riddles. The stones of Yonaguni challenge us to interpret their form, but off the coast of Greece, the seafloor offers no such ambiguity. There, beneath the crystal waters of the Peloponnese, lies a complete street map from a world before written history. This is Pavlopetri, the oldest known submerged city on Earth. For over 5,000 years, its foundations have rested in just 10 feet of water, so clear and so shallow that on a calm day, the entire grid of a Bronze Age town is visible from the surface. We are not looking at a monument or a temple complex. We are looking at a neighborhood. The layout is breathtakingly familiar, a ghostly blueprint of daily life from a millennium before the Parthenon was even a thought. Archaeologists from the University of Nottingham, using precise digital mapping, have revealed a thriving community with a clear plan. Main streets, narrower alleys, and the outlines of what were once homes, workshops, and courtyards are all etched into the seabed. In one area, the heavy stone weights from vertical looms were found, telling us this was a center for textile production. Elsewhere, pottery from distant lands like Crete and modern-day Italy shows this was a connected port, a hub in a vast Mediterranean trade network that flourished long before the age of classical Greece. Its name, Pavlopetri, is modern, but the city itself is ancient beyond memory. Its drowning around 1000 BC seems linked to the region's intense seismic activity, a series of earthquakes that likely caused the land to sink. This geological shift, while a tragedy for its inhabitants, acted as a perfect preservative. The sea gently covered the city in a protective layer of sediment, freezing it in a moment of time. There were no later settlers to build on top of it, no plows to churn its foundations. It is a pure archaeological capsule. To walk its sunken streets, as marine archaeologists do, is to perform a unique kind of time travel. You are not inferring life from a tomb or a fortress. You are seeing the very framework of a community where people cooked, worked, and raised their families. This is the profound power of Pavlopetri. It reminds us that history's greatest witnesses are often not the palaces of kings, but the quiet, organized spaces of ordinary people, waiting patiently beneath the waves to tell their story. If a city's entire life can be preserved in such detail, what happens when the sea claims not just a town, but an entire culture's most sacred island? The clear streets of Pavlopetri offer a tangible link to our past, but what if the sea holds evidence of a past so distant it challenges our entire historical timeline? In 2001, a routine pollution survey in the Gulf of Khambhat, off India's western coast, returned a sonar image that defied explanation. The ocean floor, 120 feet down, showed not natural contours but sharp, right-angled formations and a colossal, stepped structure that looked unmistakably like a pyramid. The implications were, and remain, seismic. Preliminary dredging of the site brought up more than just intriguing shapes. From the dark silt came man-made artifacts, pottery shards, worked beads, and pieces of wood. When samples were subjected to carbon dating, the results sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. The dates suggested an age of up to 9,500 years. To put that in perspective, if verified, these structures would be more than twice as old as the Great Pyramids of Giza and would predate the mighty Indus Valley civilization, long considered the cradle of Indian culture by several millennia. This would mean a sophisticated, urban society was thriving on the Indian subcontinent at a time when much of human civilization was still in its formative stages. The potential discovery, often called the Gulf of Khambhat civilization, promises a revolution in our understanding. During the last ice age, vast stretches of the world's continental shelves were dry, fertile land. As the glaciers melted and sea levels rose, these coastal plains, which would have been ideal for early human settlement, were the first to flood. The Gulf of Khambhat sits on one such shelf. The possibility that an entire chapter of human development is lying submerged on these lost coastal plains is a powerful and humbling idea. Yet this site is shrouded in more than just water. The conditions here are a nightmare for archaeologists, with powerful currents and near-zero visibility, making traditional excavation almost impossible. The dating of artifacts recovered from a turbulent seabed is also hotly contested, as objects can be moved and contaminated by the sea over millennia. The scientific debate is fierce and unresolved, with many urging extreme caution until more rigorous investigation can be done. But that is the captivating tension of this sunken mystery. It forces a profound question upon us: how much of human prehistory is not lost but simply misplaced, waiting beneath the waves on those forgotten Ice Age shores? The silent pyramid in the Gulf may be a mirage, or it may be a key to a world we have not yet dared to fully imagine. The debate over origins is silenced by the sheer weight of ambition at our next site. On the coast of modern Israel, the Mediterranean holds the sunken bones of a harbor built not just for trade but for glory. This is Caesarea Maritima, a declaration in stone and concrete by one of history's most complex figures, King Herod the Great. In the 1st century BC, Herod looked at a stretch of coastline with no natural harbor and saw an opportunity for a legacy. He commanded the construction of a port city so advanced, so audacious, it would be his personal gift to the Roman Empire. The result was nothing short of an ancient megaproject. Engineers employed a revolutionary technique, building massive wooden forms and pouring a special volcanic ash concrete that could cure underwater, creating two immense breakwaters that reached out into the open sea like protective arms. Within this artificial haven stood a lighthouse said to rival the legendary pharaohs of Alexandria, guiding ships to a complex of granaries, markets, and temples. For centuries, Caesarea thrived as the Roman gateway to the Levant, a bustling hub where cultures and goods from across the Mediterranean converged. Yet today, much of that grand harbor now lies beneath the waves, a sprawling underwater museum. Seismic shifts, likely from the same active fault lines that shaped the region's history, combined with relentless wave erosion, caused sections of the breakwater to sink. The sea that Herod's engineers had defied slowly reclaimed its domain. For underwater archaeologists, this loss is a profound gain. The silt here has preserved a layered chronicle of 2,000 years. Divers have swum past Byzantine columns that toppled onto Roman foundations. They have discovered a sunken ship from Herod's own time, its hull still carrying a cargo of delicate terracotta figurines meant for the city's markets. In a stunning find, a trove of 2,000 gold coins from the later Islamic Fatimid period was recovered from the harbor floor, perhaps the lost tax revenue or payroll of a sunken vessel. To explore Caesarea is to swim through a physical timeline of Mediterranean power, where Hellenistic, Roman, Byzantine, and Crusader stones all rest in a silent, aqueous collage. This slow-motion drowning poses a quiet, urgent question for our own era. If the most advanced engineering of the Roman world could not ultimately secure its coastline from geological forces, what does that mean for our modern megacities built on sinking deltas and eroding shores? Caesarea stands as a majestic, sobering lesson, a monument to the brilliant heights of human ingenuity and the patient, inevitable power of the sea that forever tests it. Herod's concrete harbor was a fortress against the waves, but some coastlines offer no defense at all. In the cold, dark waters of the North Sea off Suffolk, England, the seabed holds the remains of a different kind of ghost. Here, divers do not swim past grand statues or pyramids. Instead, they drift over the splintered timbers of a medieval forest and the scattered stones of a town that was simply, bite by bite, eaten by the sea. This is Dunwich, and its story is one of slow, unyielding disappearance. In the Middle Ages, Dunwich was not a minor settlement. It was a capital city, a bustling port rivaling London in size and importance, with a dozen churches, monasteries, and a thriving harbor. Its wealth came from the wool trade and fishing, its skyline a testament to medieval prosperity. Yet its foundation was its fatal flaw, built upon soft, unstable cliffs of sand and clay. The great storms of the 13th and 14th centuries began the process, each tempest carving away acres of land, swallowing streets and buildings whole. The process continued for centuries, a relentless, grinding retreat. Records tell of parishioners watching from the cliffs as their own church, stone by stone, collapsed into the surf below. The final chapter came in the early 20th century, when the last remnants of St. Peter's Church finally slid into the depths. Today, the modern village of Dunwich is a quiet fraction of its former self, and the true city lies offshore. Using side-scan sonar, researchers have mapped a haunting underwater landscape. The ghostly grid of medieval streets appears on their screens, along with the foundations of lost churches and the outlines of a harbor now 40 feet below the surface. Divers confirm the maps, finding moss-covered blocks that were once walls, and the stumps of an ancient forest that stood when this was all dry land, a landscape now populated by crabs and swaying seaweed. Dunwich's tragedy was not a single earthquake or a sudden cataclysm. It was a creeping, inevitable consumption by coastal erosion, amplified by climatic shifts of its era. This slow-motion disaster forces a humbling parallel. The challenges we now label as climate change, rising seas, and intensifying storms are not new forces. They are ancient ones, and Dunwich stands as a stark, physical record of their profound and lasting power. As we look at our own world's vulnerable coastlines, Dunwich whispers a persistent question from beneath the waves. Which of our great coastal cities, built with a confidence as solid as medieval stone, might we one day be mapping as a ghostly outline on a future sonar screen? Far from the eroding coastlines, the highest navigable waters on Earth hold their own submerged secrets. At an altitude of over 12,000 feet, the vast, sapphire expanse of Lake Titicaca cradles the sunken echoes of Andean spirituality. Here, the water is not an invading force but a sacred element, deliberately woven into the fabric of ancient belief. Off the shores of the Island of the Sun, the legendary birthplace of the Inca sun god, divers have mapped a haunting underwater landscape. Submerged stone walls trace ceremonial pathways across the lakebed. Enigmatic cairns and what appear to be the foundations of small temples rise from the silt, structures dating back more than 1,500 years to the time of the Tiwanaku culture, and perhaps even earlier. These are not the ruins of a drowned village. They feel intentionally placed, a sacred architecture built for the water itself. Local Aymara legends have long spoken of a glorious lost city beneath the waves called Wanaku, and the discoveries seem to give form to these stories. Among the stones, archaeologists have recovered a carved stone anchor and delicate foil offerings made of gold, objects that speak of ritual rather than daily life. These were likely gifts to the powerful deities of the lake, the Apus, or mountain spirits, that governed fertility and life in this harsh, high-altitude world. The frigid, dark waters of Titicaca act as a perfect preservative, offering a tantalizing possibility. Organic materials like textiles, wooden tools, or even ceremonial offerings that would have vanished on land could still be intact in this cold, oxygen-poor environment, waiting to reveal intimate details of pre-Columbian spiritual practice. This leads to the central mystery: why build structures that were meant to be submerged? The answer may be found in the Andean worldview, which did not see a separation between the physical and spiritual realms. Lake Titicaca was not just a body of water, it was a portal, a gateway to the underworld and a direct line to the gods. Deliberately placing temples or offerings beneath the surface could have been the ultimate act of devotion, a way to commune directly with the powers that govern their world. Alternatively, shifting climate patterns over centuries may have caused the lake level to rise gradually, slowly claiming these sacred sites in a process the builders themselves might have interpreted as the lake accepting their gifts. The underwater cairns of Titicaca challenge our modern perspective. They teach us that for some cultures, flooding was not a catastrophe to be feared, but a sacred embrace to be designed for. In this high-altitude mirror, we see a civilization that looked into the deep blue and saw not an end but a beginning. If a lake could be a portal, what then of an entire city believed to be the source of all civilization? A place so legendary its very name is a synonym for loss. The sacred cairns of Lake Titicaca reveal a deliberate embrace of water, but for other ancient societies, the rising sea was not a spiritual choice but a slow, inescapable reality. Off the coast of Atlit, Israel, the Mediterranean holds a village frozen in a moment of profound transition. This is Atlit Yam, a 9,000-year-old settlement resting just 30 feet below the surface, a direct window into a Neolithic world on the edge of change. Discovered by marine archaeologist Ehud Galilee in the 1980s, this is not a collection of scattered artifacts. It is a complete community, preserved with startling intimacy on the sandy seabed. The foundations of rectangular stone houses are still clearly visible, arranged around courtyards. The villagers dug deep wells lined with stone to access fresh water, a testament to their engineering skill. Evidence shows they cultivated wheat and barley and kept domesticated cattle, pigs, and dogs. This was not a nomadic band, but a settled, sophisticated farming society thriving on the fertile coastal plain. Most haunting are the silent structures they left behind. A semicircle of massive, upright stones stands guard on the seafloor, a miniature Stonehenge arranged with clear intention around what was once a bubbling freshwater spring. This stone circle suggests a shared ritual space, a place where the community gathered for ceremonies that bound them together. Yet, woven into this snapshot of daily life is a more somber discovery. Within some of the burials found at the site, researchers identified the earliest known evidence of tuberculosis in human remains. This finding offers a quiet, poignant insight into the challenges of this new, settled existence, where living in close quarters with animals created new health dynamics. The ultimate fate of Atlit Yam, however, was written not by illness but by climate. As the last ice age receded, global sea levels began their relentless climb. The Mediterranean advanced inch by inch, year by year, salinating the freshwater springs and wells that sustained the village. The farmlands were slowly inundated. The community likely faced this creeping disaster for generations, perhaps deepening their wells and reinforcing their homes, until the day the water finally won. They gathered what they could and retreated inland, abandoning their stone circle to the sea. Atlit Yam is therefore a double revelation. It shows us the incredible innovation of early settled life, the wells, the agriculture, the community structures. But it also shows us one of humanity's first recorded retreats in the face of environmental change. This 9,000-year-old village is a profound time capsule, a preserved moment of human resilience and adaptation that ended not with a sudden catastrophe, but with a long, slow goodbye to a drowning home. It asks us a quiet, urgent question as we observe our own changing coastlines today. How many generations does it take for a rising sea to become an undeniable truth? The silent retreat from Atlit Yam was a story of necessity, but sometimes the choice to submerge history is deliberate. Deep within the emerald waters of Qingdao Lake in China lies a site that seems conjured from a dream. This is not a ruin slowly claimed by the sea, but an entire imperial city, intentionally and carefully drowned. Known as Cheng, the Lion City, its story begins in the 2nd century, flourishing through successive dynasties as a center of commerce and culture. Its fate, however, was sealed in 1959, when the valley it occupied was flooded to create a massive reservoir and hydroelectric dam. The waters rose and the Lion City was silenced not by nature's whim but by modern necessity. For decades it rested in obscurity, a secret kept by the deep, cold freshwater. Then, in the early 2000s, explorers and archaeologists rediscovered it, and what they found was breathtaking. The same freshwater that submerged it acted as a perfect preservative, free from the corrosive salt and destructive waves of the ocean. Descending into its depths is like entering a ghostly, liquid museum. Intricate stone carvings of lions, dragons, and phoenixes adorn archways and walls, their details still razor-sharp. 5 monumental city gates stand sentinel, and ornate memorial arches from the Ming and Qing dynasties rise from the lakebed, their inscriptions still legible. The city layout, with its wide streets and over 260 archways, remains almost perfectly intact, a frozen snapshot of imperial Chinese urban design. This creates a profound and unsettling beauty. Cheng is arguably the most visually stunning submerged ruin on Earth, a masterpiece preserved in a way no ocean site ever could be. Yet its very perfection forces us to confront a difficult ethical question. Here, history was not lost to a disaster, but knowingly traded. The hydroelectric power generated here lights modern cities and fuels progress for millions. The creation of the reservoir was an undeniable engine for contemporary development, but that progress came at the direct cost of sealing away a priceless cultural treasure, sacrificing a tangible connection to a layered past for the needs of the present and future. Diving through its silent, majestic streets is to swim through this paradox. We witness a preservation so exquisite it feels miraculous, while being acutely aware that this miracle was born from a conscious choice to erase. The Lion City does not whisper of ancient climate change or tectonic fury. It speaks instead of the eternal human calculus between preserving what was and building what will be. It asks us, as we shape our own world, what invaluable pieces of our shared story might we be quietly, deliberately flooding today? The paradox of Cheng is a modern choice, but sometimes the sea itself performs the revelation. In 2004, the Indian Ocean unleashed one of the most devastating tsunamis in recorded history. As the colossal wave receded from the coast of Tamil Nadu, India, it momentarily pulled the ocean back like a vast curtain. And there, in the exposed seabed before the ancient port city of Mahabalipuram, locals saw something astonishing: stone walls, the outline of a large, collapsed structure, and the unmistakable form of a gigantic sculpted lion emerged from the retreating water. For a few brief minutes, a centuries-old legend was proven true. The local folklore had always spoken of 7 magnificent pagodas, glorious temples built by the Pallava kings over 1,300 years ago. The story said that 6 of these temples were so beautiful, so prideful in their splendor, that the gods sent a great flood to swallow them into the sea as punishment. Only one, the shore temple, was left standing on the beach as a reminder. For generations, this was considered just a myth, a poetic explanation for the powerful, erosive force of the ocean. But the tsunami's terrible withdrawal revealed that the story was not mere fiction. It was a preserved memory of a real geological catastrophe. In the wake of the tsunami, marine archaeologists from India and the United Kingdom conducted systematic surveys of the area. Using sonar and diving expeditions, they mapped the seabed just a few hundred meters offshore. Their findings were definitive. They identified large, man-made structures, including a long, collapsed wall nearly 200 feet in length, the foundations of other buildings, and scattered stone blocks that clearly came from temple architecture. Further exploration revealed that these were not isolated ruins. They were part of a substantial port city from the Pallava dynasty, a thriving hub of art, commerce, and spirituality that extended far beyond the current shoreline. The discovery validates an incredible truth that oral history, passed down through countless generations, can act as a resilient vessel for factual events across more than a millennium. The people of this coast did not forget. They encoded the trauma of a lost city into a moral legend, ensuring its story would never fully disappear. This creates a profound and haunting symmetry at Mahabalipuram. The same immense natural force that likely destroyed the temples in a past cataclysm, a tsunami or a series of great storms, was the very force that temporarily revealed their remains. It is a stark lesson in the cyclical nature of coastal life, where the ocean is both creator and reclaimer. The sunken temples do more than bridge myth and material evidence. They show us that sometimes the most enduring historical records are not written on stone or parchment, but carried on the breath of storytellers, waiting for the sea to pull back and whisper, "You remembered correctly." The tsunami's retreat proved the power of oral memory, but some archives are not recalled in stories. They are kept in absolute silence. Deep within the jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula, the earth opens into crystal-clear pools known as cenotes. These are not the ruins of walls or streets, but something far more profound: sacred, three-dimensional libraries where water, geology, and human belief have collaborated to preserve an unmatched record of life and ritual. Formed over millennia as acidic rainwater dissolved the soft limestone bedrock, creating vast underground caverns that later collapsed, these sinkholes were far more than water sources to the Maya. They were revered as portals to Xibalba, the watery underworld, a realm of gods and ancestors. To access its power or appease its spirits, the Maya performed ceremonies at the cenote's edge, offering precious objects into the deep. Modern divers, equipped with lights and meticulous mapping tools, have illuminated this dark archive. They have recovered exquisite jade pieces, delicate gold artifacts, and countless pottery vessels, all gifts intended for the gods below. But the cenotes hold an even deeper chronicle, one that predates the Maya by thousands of years. As the Ice Age ended and sea levels rose, these caves flooded, trapping and preserving the remains of now extinct creatures like giant ground sloths and saber-toothed cats in a perfect anaerobic environment. Most poignant is the discovery within the Hoyo Negro cave system, the complete, undisturbed skeleton of a teenage girl, nicknamed Naya by researchers. Analysis suggests she lived over 13,000 years ago, and her resting place offers critical clues about the earliest human journeys into the Americas. Her story, preserved in the silent dark, connects a vast span of time. Exploring a cenote is therefore an act of vertical archaeology. A diver might pass a Maya offering pot resting on a ledge, then descend further to glimpse the mineral-encrusted bone of an Ice Age animal on the cavern floor below. This is not a single lost city to be mapped, but an entire sacred landscape, intentionally curated by culture and faithfully preserved by geology. The cenotes challenge our very definition of a ruin. They teach us that sometimes the most important historical site isn't a structure humans built and abandoned, but a natural feature they chose to fill with meaning, layer by layer, offering by offering, across 12,000 years. What happens then when the sea doesn't just flood a sacred space, but an entire island that was the beating heart of a civilization's identity? The cenotes are sacred archives, but an entire sea can be a tomb of a different kind. The Black Sea holds a darkness that does not obscure history but perfectly preserves it. Its deepest waters are anoxic, completely devoid of oxygen, a condition that halts decay and creates a time capsule unlike any other. Here, wooden ships from the Ottoman Empire rest on the seabed with their masts still standing, their hulls untouched by the worms that devour wood in other oceans. This remarkable environment is the backdrop for one of archaeology's most sweeping theories, the suggestion that this basin witnessed a flood of truly mythic proportions. Around 5,600 BC, as the last ice age receded, rising Mediterranean waters are believed to have catastrophically breached the natural dam at the Bosporus Strait. What followed was not a gentle rise, but a cataclysmic cascade, a torrent of salt water that may have poured into the freshwater Black Sea Lake with 200 times the force of Niagara Falls. The shoreline would have retreated by over a mile per day, swallowing the coastal plains where early farming communities had settled. This event, some researchers propose, was so traumatic, so deeply etched into human memory, that it echoed for millennia, evolving into the foundational flood stories found in Mesopotamian epics and later, the biblical narrative of Noah. While the search for a single submerged city from this specific event continues, the seafloor itself tells a compelling story. Advanced sonar has mapped the ancient landscape beneath the modern waves, revealing the ghostly river channels and lake shores of that lost world. More concretely, along these drowned coastlines, researchers have identified the remains of Neolithic structures, the stone foundations of villages that were indeed inundated as the waters rose. The real treasure of the Black Sea, however, lies in its unparalleled preservation. Remotely operated vehicles have documented over 60 shipwrecks from 2,000 years of history, their cargoes and construction frozen in time. This is not just a gallery of lost ships, it is a preserved cross-section of maritime technology, trade, and daily life. The anoxic depths offer a unique opportunity, a chance to study a lost ecosystem and a pivotal geological moment that may have reshaped human migration. Imagine those early farmers, their world literally vanishing under a relentless wall of water, forced to flee inland. This dispersal could have carried agricultural knowledge and stories of the Great Deluge into the heart of Europe, seeding cultures and legends in its wake. The Black Sea does not offer a simple ruin to point to, but something more profound, an entire environment that acts as a witness. It asks us to consider how a real, terrifying event can ripple through generations, transforming from lived experience into sacred story, all while its physical evidence rests in perfect silence in the eternal dark below. The anoxic depths of the Black Sea preserve a single moment of catastrophic change, but in the shallow, sunlit waters of the Korean Strait, the stones tell a story of slow, patient loss. Scattered across the seabed around islands like Jeju, resting in waters just 60 to 90 feet deep, lie massive, unmistakable forms. They are great slabs of rock, some weighing many tons, balanced atop upright stones to form a table-like structure. On land, across Korea and other parts of the world, we recognize these instantly as dolmens, the monumental tombs of prehistoric peoples. To find them standing silently on the ocean floor is a deeply disorienting sight. They were not placed here by the sea. They were built by human hands on dry land, in places where people lived, honored their ancestors, and shaped their world. Their silent presence underwater marks a coastline that no longer exists. Researchers mapping these submerged megaliths face a compelling puzzle. The sheer number of dolmens on the Korean peninsula is staggering, with tens of thousands recorded, suggesting a widespread and highly organized megalithic culture that flourished thousands of years ago. The underwater versions, found at depths that correspond with known sea level rise since the end of the last ice age, imply that this culture's territory was far more extensive than the current map shows. These sunken stones are not isolated oddities. They are the outermost markers of a vast, continuous cultural landscape that once stretched across what is now the floor of the Yellow Sea. This raises profound questions about their purpose. Were these specific structures burial sites for communities that lived on that now drowned coastal plain, their resting places chosen with care on high ground that eventually became islands? Or could they have served a different ceremonial function, perhaps aligned with an ancient shoreline to mark sacred spaces or territorial boundaries? The cold seawater has washed away any organic remains or artifacts that could offer definitive answers, leaving only the enduring stones themselves as silent witnesses. Their power lies in that silence. They do not speak of a sudden disaster, but of a gradual, inexorable transformation of the world. As the glaciers melted, the sea crept inward over centuries, generation by generation. The descendants of the dolmen builders would have watched their ancestral lands slowly shrink, the memory of those places hardening into legend before finally being claimed by the waves. These submerged dolmens are therefore a unique kind of monument. They are not just tombs for individuals, but tombstones for an entire lost geography, a physical bridge between the Korea we know and a larger, greener peninsula that now exists only beneath the waves and in the alignment of these sunken stones. They ask us to reconsider the true scale of prehistoric cultures, whose full domain we may only ever understand by looking where the land used to be. The sunken dolmens of Korea speak of a land lost to slow centuries, but history can also strike in a single, terrible minute. On the sunny morning of June 7, 1692, the sands beneath the Caribbean pirate capital of Port Royal simply turned to liquid. In less than 3 minutes, a massive earthquake caused 2/3 of the notorious city to slide intact into Kingston Harbor. Where bustling streets and taverns had stood moments before, the sea now churned over rooftops. This was not a slow drowning. It was a sudden, spectacular burial at sea, an event so dramatic that many in Europe saw it as divine judgment upon what was famously called the wickedest city on earth. Port Royal was the unruly heartbeat of the Atlantic world, a lawless hub where pirates, privateers, merchants, and enslaved people mingled in a chaotic, wealthy frenzy. Its rapid end, however, created one of the world's most extraordinary underwater time capsules. Because the city's buildings were swallowed so quickly, they were sealed in layers of sediment, protected from currents and decay. Marine archaeologists exploring the site have found something almost unheard of elsewhere: a 17th-century urban landscape frozen at 11:43 in the morning. They swim through streets where walls still stand, peer into rooms, and recover objects exactly where they were dropped or stored. A pocket watch was found, its hands forever stopped at the moment the quake struck. Pewter plates sit where a meal was interrupted, and clay pipes lie beside upturned chairs. These are not treasures from a tomb, but the mundane belongings of daily life in a bustling port, offering an incredibly intimate and unedited snapshot of colonial existence. The site reveals the city's stark contrasts, from the refined imported ceramics in a wealthy merchant's house to the sparse living quarters of the enslaved. Port Royal's legacy is therefore a double lesson. It is a stark reminder of the sudden, awesome power of geology to rewrite human geography in an instant, a lesson for any city built on unstable ground. But perhaps more profoundly, its underwater preservation forces us to look past the myth of pirates and vice, to see the complex, fragile reality of a community that lived, traded, and dreamed on the edge of an empire until the very ground beneath it chose to let go. The ground beneath the North Sea holds more than shipwrecks and lost anchors. It cradles an entire continent that once was. This is Doggerland, a name given to a vast green plain that, for thousands of years, connected the British Isles to the Netherlands and Denmark. It was not a barren tundra, but a rich, fertile landscape of rolling hills, forested valleys, and meandering rivers teeming with life. Herds of mammoth and aurochs grazed its meadows, while Mesolithic hunter-gatherers followed these animals, establishing seasonal camps along its lakeshores. This was a thriving, populated world, a central artery of prehistoric Europe. Then the world warmed. As the last great ice sheets melted, sea levels began their inexorable climb. For generations, the people of Doggerland would have witnessed their world slowly shrinking. Coastal marshes would flood, familiar ridges would become islands, and the salt water would creep further inland each year. It was a slow-motion retreat, a reshaping of their entire universe measured in the lifetimes of grandparents and grandchildren. The final act, however, was not slow. Around 6,200 BC, geological evidence suggests a massive underwater landslide off the coast of Norway, known as the Storegga Slide, triggered a catastrophic tsunami that roared across the remaining low-lying plains. This wall of water would have been devastating, scouring the landscape and likely delivering the final blow to a homeland already in peril. Today, that entire world lies beneath the grey, churning waters of the North Sea. We will never find a sunken city of stone here, for its people built with wood and earth. Instead, the evidence surfaces in the nets of modern fishermen. For decades, trawlers have been hauling up an eerie catalogue of this lost continent: mammoth teeth and tusks, ancient tree stumps still rooted in blocks of peat, and most tellingly, the crafted tools of its human inhabitants. Barbed points carved from antler, used for fishing or hunting, refined flint axes and scrapers. These are not isolated finds, but a constant, scattered drizzle of artifacts that speaks to a once dense human presence. Archaeologists working with these fishermen and using advanced seismic mapping have begun to chart the drowned landscape, identifying ancient river channels, lakes, and coastlines on the seafloor. Doggerland forces a profound shift in perspective. It is not a ruin in the traditional sense, but a lost chapter of human geography. It reminds us that the map is not permanent. The English Channel was once a river valley within this greater plain. The isolation of Britain was a geological afterthought. This story challenges our sense of place, suggesting that the very identities of nations are built upon landscapes that are, in geological time, fleeting. What cultures, what connections, what stories were lost when those last hills finally slipped beneath the waves? Doggerland's legacy is a humbling one, written in bone and flint scattered across the seabed, a testament to a world that simply vanished, leaving only fragments to whisper of its passing. The silent plains of Doggerland are mapped only by scattered tools, but in the bright Mediterranean sun, history lies in plain sight. Just off the northeastern coast of Crete, the ancient city of Olous offers a different kind of encounter. Here, you do not need sonar or a deep-sea submersible to find the past. You simply need a mask and snorkel. In the impossibly clear, turquoise waters of Elander Bay, the grid of a classical city is laid out beneath the surface like a ghostly blueprint. You can float above the neatly cut stone foundations of houses, follow the lines of ancient streets, and trace the outline of the city's protective walls, all just a few feet below the gentle waves. This was not a minor outpost. Olous was a powerful and independent Dorian city-state, minting its own coins and striking treaties with neighbors like Knossos. Its prosperity was anchored in the sea, and today the sea has become its display case. The most distinct feature is the circular foundation of a temple dedicated to Britomartis, a Cretan goddess of mountains and hunting who was later associated with Artemis. To swim over this sacred circle is to have a direct physical connection to a site of worship that resonated over 2,000 years ago. The cause of its drowning is a quiet, geological story shared by countless Mediterranean settlements. The land here did not collapse in a single cataclysm, but underwent a gradual seismic subsidence, a slow sinking of the coastal shelf over centuries, likely accelerated by earthquakes. The waters of the bay simply crept in, claiming the city's foundations in a process so gradual its inhabitants likely adapted until the sea finally won. This accessibility is what makes Olous so profoundly democratic. It requires no special training or equipment. A visitor on a sunny afternoon can literally swim through history, gazing down at the same stones that citizens once walked upon. This intimate proximity prompts a haunting question for any traveler. As you paddle in the warm, shallow waters of a picturesque bay anywhere along this ancient coastline, how many other forgotten city squares and temple foundations might be resting just beneath your feet, hidden only by a thin, shimmering veil of water? Olous is a gentle, open-air museum, a reminder that the border between our present and the classical past is sometimes no deeper than the length of your own shadow on the seabed. The clear stones of Olous invite a leisurely swim, but in the cold, dark mud of a northern inlet, a different kind of port waits, one built for commerce and conquest. This is Hedeby, and its submerged harbor holds the waterlogged ledger of the Viking world. While the earthen ramparts of the town still rise on land, its true economic heart now beats silently beneath the surface of the Schlei Inlet in northern Germany. In its 10th century prime, Hedeby was a powerhouse, a bustling cosmopolitan hub where traders from Scandinavia, the Frankish Empire, the Baltic, and beyond converged. Its strategic location at the narrow base of the Jutland Peninsula meant that goods and ships moving between the North Sea and the Baltic could avoid a dangerous open sea journey by portaging a short distance over land. This made Hedeby a choke point of wealth and information, a place where silver Arabic dirhams, fine Frankish glass, Slavic amber, and Norse furs all changed hands. The town's lifeblood flowed directly through its waterfront, and it is there, in the preserving embrace of the waterlogged silt, that its most dynamic story is told. Marine archaeologists probing the harbor floor have uncovered not just scattered artifacts, but the very infrastructure of Viking Age globalization. They have mapped the remains of elaborate wooden jetties and piers that extended far into the water, engineering designed to handle the constant comings and goings of cargo vessels. They have found the preserved timbers of sunken ships themselves, offering a direct, three-dimensional blueprint of the famed Norse shipbuilding techniques that connected continents. Most telling are the countless small finds that slipped between the planks and settled into the anaerobic mud, where oxygen could not reach them to cause decay. A delicate wooden scale and folding brass weights speak of precise trade, A stunning deer antler comb, intricately carved, tells of personal grooming and craft. Shattered pottery from distant Rhineland workshops and the bones of imported livestock reveal the scale and variety of goods passing through this watery gateway. This submerged landscape provides a record that the dry land of Hedeby simply cannot. The town onshore was repeatedly sacked and burned, its structures leaving only post holes and hearths. But the harbor, as it slowly silted up and was abandoned, acted as a time capsule. The organic materials, the wood, the leather, the textiles, that would have vanished on land are here preserved in stunning detail. They tell the story not of kings and battles, but of merchants haggling on damp docks, of sailors repairing rigging, of the daily, messy business of a connected world. Hedeby's drowned harbor shifts our focus from the Viking as raider to the Viking as networker, a facilitator of vast economic exchange. It reminds us that for a seafaring culture, the most vital part of a city was often the fragile interface between land and water, the first place to be abandoned to the elements and the very place that holds its most intimate secrets. If a harbor can preserve the texture of daily commerce so perfectly, what final secrets might be kept by a city that was not merely a port, but an entire island kingdom swallowed by the waves? The harbors of Hedeby preserved the commerce of life, but the sea also holds spaces dedicated entirely to what comes after. Off the volcanic coasts of the Canary Islands, the dark mouths of underwater caves guard a different kind of legacy. Within these submerged chambers, the ocean has preserved not the noise of a marketplace, but the profound silence of ancient remembrance. These are the potential resting places of the Guanches, the indigenous people who lived in isolation on these islands for over 1,000 years before European contact in the 15th century. Known for their sophisticated practice of mummification, the Guanches created a unique culture shaped by their volcanic environment. Their world was one of mountains and caves, and it is within caves that they often laid their loved ones to rest, placing them in natural galleries they considered sacred. As global sea levels rose steadily after the last ice age, the ocean began to claim the lowest of these coastal grottos. What were once dry, accessible chambers, carefully chosen for ceremonial purposes, slowly filled with seawater, their entrances eventually sealed by the rising tide. This slow flooding did not destroy these sites, but instead locked them away. In recent years, divers exploring these flooded caves around islands like Gran Canaria have reported finding skeletal remains and pottery fragments in positions that suggest deliberate arrangement, not random scattering by the currents. The cool, stable saltwater environment could have acted as a remarkable preservative, potentially keeping organic materials intact that would have vanished on dry land. Each of these submerged chambers is therefore a sealed archive, a time capsule that may hold unparalleled clues about the Guanches' origins, which are still debated by scholars, and their complete funerary rituals beyond what we understand from the mummies found in the high, dry caves inland. These sunken tombs present a poignant geographical truth. Ancient peoples often chose burial sites in places of great spiritual power, which frequently meant locations with a connection to the elements, like caves near the life-giving sea. When that sea later rose, it did not desecrate these spaces, it consecrated them anew, wrapping them in a protective blanket of blue darkness. To find a burial cave underwater is to encounter a sacred geography transformed, a reminder that the border between the realm of the ancestors and the realm of Poseidon was never fixed, but always subject to the slow, patient breathing of the planet itself. The Gulf of Khambhat presents a paradox of modern discovery, where the most tantalizing evidence is often the hardest to verify. This submerged landscape forces us to confront a fundamental question in marine archaeology. How do we prove what we cannot clearly see? The initial sonar images from 2001 were electrifying, suggesting the geometric precision of a planned city far older than any known civilization in the region. Yet the environment here is an archaeologist's greatest adversary. Powerful currents stir the seabed into a perpetual, blinding cloud of silt. Visibility can drop to mere inches, making traditional diving surveys perilous and visual confirmation nearly impossible. This is where the scientific method must step in, acting as a guide through the murk. As experts like marine archaeologist Justin Morris have pointed out, sonar anomalies, no matter how compelling, are only the beginning of a story. The path from an intriguing shape on a screen to a confirmed lost city is long and demands systematic physical evidence. The artifacts recovered from the site, including pottery and worked wood, were carbon dated to astonishing ages. But the controversy lies in their context. In such a dynamic underwater environment, objects can be moved, redeposited, and mixed by currents over millennia. A piece of wood dating back 9,500 years might have originated far from where it was found, carried by the very waters that hid it. Without the clear stratigraphy that archaeologists rely on, the undisturbed layers of soil that establish a timeline, definitive conclusions remain elusive. The heated debate that has followed is not a failure of science, but its essential engine. It exemplifies the rigorous process of peer review and skepticism that guards against premature claims. This controversy has had a positive, galvanizing effect on the field. It has underscored the urgent need for new, non-invasive technologies to investigate such hostile sites, from advanced sediment-penetrating radar to robotic excavation tools that can operate in zero visibility. So, whether the structures on the Khambhat seafloor are the remnants of a forgotten metropolis or a stunning geological coincidence, their legacy is already secure. They have irrevocably shifted our gaze. They remind every researcher that our planet's drowned continental shelves are not empty voids, but the most likely repositories for the missing chapters of the human story. The search is no longer about if we will find more, but how we will develop the tools to finally see them clearly. After such a debate over origins, we arrive at our final site, a place where the story is not about what was lost, but about the profound choice to lose it. This gradual repurposing of the sacred or the commercial finds its most opulent expression in a bay not of dark caves, but of impossibly clear blue water. The sunken city of Baiae offers a vision of luxury so profound, it was considered too decadent even for Rome. Nestled in the volcanic landscape of the Bay of Naples, Baiae was the premier resort for the Roman elite, a place where emperors like Nero and Caligula built sprawling villas to indulge in the region's natural thermal springs. This was not a city of senators or soldiers, but of poets, politicians, and pleasure seekers, a gilded escape from the formalities of the capital. Its fate, however, was written by the very geology that made it attractive. The land here is subject to a phenomenon called bradysism, a slow, seismic breathing of the Earth's crust caused by the movement of magma deep below. Over centuries, this caused the coastline to gradually sink, allowing the Mediterranean to creep inland and claim the most lavish waterfront properties. Unlike Port Royal's violent collapse, Baiae's drowning was a languid, almost graceful affair. The retreat was slow enough that its wealthy residents could simply pack their most precious belongings and move further up the slope, abandoning their marble-clad vacation homes to the advancing tide. Today, this has created an underwater archaeological park of surreal beauty. Snorkelers and divers glide over the crumbled walls of imperial villas, where intricate black and white mosaics still pave the floors. They swim through the skeletal remains of colonnaded walkways, where marble columns now provide a substrate for vibrant corals and swaying anemones. A statue of the god Dionysus, once the centerpiece of a lavish garden, now stands on the seabed, his stone shoulders adorned with a living cloak of seaweed, as if the spirit of revelry he represents has been absorbed by the sea itself. This transformation is what makes Baiae so philosophically powerful. It represents a different kind of loss, one of deliberate abandonment rather than desperate flight. The sea did not conquer Baiae through terror, but through patient, irresistible invitation, and in doing so, it performed a profound act of recycling. The ultimate symbol of Roman leisure and excess has been quietly converted into a thriving marine sanctuary, a haven for fish and flora. The heated floors of the ancient baths are now warm reefs. The opulent dining halls are nurseries for sea life. Baiae challenges our view of ruins as tragic in points. Instead, it presents a cycle where human ambition creates a stage and nature, given enough time, will always write a new act upon it. The silent, submerged mosaics ask us a final, reflective question as our journey concludes. In a world where we build monuments to our own comfort and power, which of our creations might the future find not as shattered relics, but as the beautiful, repurposed foundations for a world we never intended to build? Each silent city we have explored is a separate chapter, but together they form a single, urgent volume in the library of human experience. These 20 submerged ruins are more than isolated curiosities. They are data points on a vast graph, charting our species' long and intimate dance with a changing planet. Their resting places beneath the waves tell a unified story, one where the coastline has never been a permanent border, but a shifting frontier of both opportunity and retreat. For thousands of years, the rhythm of advancing and receding seas has been a fundamental conductor of human movement. The drowned villages like Atlit and the submerged plains of Doggerland show us communities thriving on fertile coastal shelves during periods of lower sea levels, only to be gradually displaced as the waters rose at the end of the last ice age. These were not sudden disasters, but slow-motion transformations that reshaped continents and redirected the flow of entire cultures over generations. The chronology of these losses is profoundly telling. So many of these cities slipped beneath the waves during documented periods of climatic transition or intense geological activity. The slow drowning of Heracleion aligns with regional seismic shifts and sea level change. The final inundation of Doggerland correlates with both meltwater pulses and a catastrophic tsunami. These underwater archives provide physical, tangible evidence for climatic events we have previously only inferred from ice cores or sediment layers. They are the stone and mortar proof of past planetary changes, offering scientists critical benchmarks to understand the rate and impact of sea level rise, helping to refine models that predict our own climatic future. In this way, a toppled column in the Mediterranean is not just a relic, it is a prehistoric tide gauge. This collective story reveals a dual truth about civilization. On one hand, it lays bare a profound vulnerability. From the liquefied clay beneath Heracleion to the eroding cliffs of Dunwich, these sites demonstrate that even the most prosperous and technologically advanced societies are built upon foundations that nature can alter or erase. The Roman concrete of Caesarea, a marvel of ancient engineering, now lies broken by the very sea it was meant to master. Yet, in the same breath, these ruins speak to an incredible capacity for resilience and adaptation. The people of Atlit dug deeper wells as their springs turned salty. The inhabitants of Pavlopetri likely relocated inland, carrying their culture with them. The legend of Mahabalipuram proves that communities preserved the memory of loss across 100 generations, transforming trauma into story. The choice to build sacred structures for the water, as seen at Lake Titicaca, shows an adaptive mindset that sought harmony with inevitable forces rather than futile domination. Ultimately, these sunken worlds are not merely echoes of the past, they are precedents for the present. They warn us with absolute clarity that history, human history, is not always written on dry land. A significant portion of our shared narrative is already submerged, and the forces that placed it there have not ceased. As we look at modern megacities built on sinking deltas and increasingly exposed coastlines, The silent streets of these 20 lost cities ask us a direct and unavoidable question. Will we listen to the lessons they have been holding for centuries, or will we simply become the next layer in the seabed's archive, another civilization that learned the hard way that the shore was only ever a temporary home? This epic, unfinished story is one we are still writing. From the potential pyramids of the Gulf of Khambhat to the sunken pirate dens of Port Royal, each site we have explored is far more than a historical curiosity. These silent cities are profound teachers, reminding us with absolute clarity that the maps of human history are not permanent. They are constantly being redrawn, not by kings or conquerors, but by the patient, relentless power of the sea. They offer us 3 essential lessons for our own time. The first is humility. The broken concrete of Caesarea and the liquefied foundations of Heracleion show that even our most brilliant engineering is tested by natural forces that operate on a scale far beyond human lifetimes. The second lesson is curiosity. The perfectly preserved grid of Pavlopetri and the sacred cairns of Lake Titicaca prove that the past is not a single, simple narrative, but a layered mystery waiting to be understood. Each discovery challenges what we thought we knew, pushing the boundaries of archaeology and rewriting textbooks. Finally, these places instill a deep sense of urgency. The slow erosion that consumed Dunwich and the rising waters that forced the retreat from Atlit are not ancient anomalies. They are processes that continue today, impacting coastal communities across our world. Preserving our present coastal heritage, both cultural and natural, is an act of learning directly from these sunken classrooms. As our technology advances, who can say what other lost worlds we will illuminate in the deep? New sonar systems, autonomous underwater vehicles, and genetic analysis of ancient sediments promise to reveal chapters of our story we cannot yet conceive. Perhaps after this journey, you will look at the ocean a little differently. It is not just a barrier between lands, but the world's greatest archive, a keeper of secrets waiting for the right moment to share them. If this exploration into the deep past captivated you, consider subscribing for more journeys into history's greatest mysteries. We would love to hear in the comments which submerged ruin you find most fascinating, or which mystery of the deep calls to you. Remember, the water holds countless stories, and the next great discovery is always just one dive away. The depths are not silent, they are simply waiting for us to learn how to listen.